The signal arrived on a Tuesday. Ash Carter was elbow-deep in the guts of a malfunctioning satellite sanitation drone when the alert pinged through his neural interface. He ignored it, at first. Maintenance priority protocols didn't typically allow for interruptions during precision work. The old SCR-117 units were temperamental at best, and this particular model had been skittishly avoiding the orbital collection grid for weeks. "Got you now," Ash murmured, bypassing a frayed connection in the drone's navigation cluster. His fingers moved with practiced precision inside the cramped maintenance bay of his orbital tug. Outside the viewport, Earth gleamed blue and tranquil, its orbit necklaced with the glittering lights of habitat rings and transfer stations, humanity's most visible face to the cosmos. The alert pinged again, this time with an emergency override that splashed red across his vision. Priority: Alpha unidentified objects, breaching outer system defenses. All personnel return to stations. Ash frowned. "Computer, verification on that alert?" "Verified through 5 independent channels," the system replied. "Central Command authentication protocols confirmed." That was unusual. Central Command rarely bothered with the orbital maintenance crews, and certainly not with direct alerts. Ash quickly sealed the drone's access panel and secured it in the tug's cargo bay. As he maneuvered his vessel back towards Sentinel Station Alpha, he opened a secure channel. "Carter to Command. Received alert. Request situation assessment." The response came not from the automated system, but from a voice he recognized: Director Tamsin Gray, Earth's chief data ethicist. Her voice was tightly controlled, but Ash could hear the underlying tension. "Ash, we need you at the Nexus, immediately. Veil protocols compromised." The words sent ice through his veins. The Veil. Earth's most sophisticated camouflage network was supposed to be impenetrable. It masked humanity's true technological capabilities, creating strategic gaps in any outside observer's data collection. A project he'd spent years perfecting before walking away. "How bad?" "Catastrophic. We've got visitors, and they've already bypassed our outer system sentinels without triggering a single proximity alert. They're currently parked in high lunar orbit." "Pirates raiders." "Worse. Formal delegation? They call themselves the Var-Re." Tamsin paused. "And they're asking for you specifically, by your full military designation." Ash closed his eyes briefly. That designation had been buried under layers of encryption and false identities when he'd left the program. If these visitors knew it, they'd managed to pierce defenses that even most of Earth's own security apparatus couldn't access. "How I've been off the grid for 5 years, 3 months, Tamsin finished for him. "Yet somehow you're listed as Earth's designated interface in their formal communications. Did you leave something running in the Veil architecture that might have triggered this?" Ash guided his tug into the docking approach vector, mind racing. "Possibly. I built redundancies into the system failsafes that would activate under specific threat patterns. Well, whatever you did, we need you to undo it. Fast. The Vari have announced their intention to commence something called the Apex Rite, and they're making it clear that Earth's sovereignty is at stake." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk as Ash processed this information. "I'll be at the Nexus in 20 minutes. "Make it 10, Tamsin replied. "And Ash, they look like hunters." The channel closed, leaving Ash alone with his thoughts and the suddenly oppressive silence of his maintenance tug. He quickly secured his station and grabbed his personal gear, a habit from his military days he'd never quite abandoned, despite years of routine orbital maintenance work. As he made his way through the station's corridors toward the rapid transit hub, notifications continued to flood his neural interface. System-wide alerts, security protocols engaging, military assets moving from standby to active status. Earth was waking up its hidden defenses. Preparations made in secret for a day they'd hoped would never come. Ash paused at a viewport, looking outward toward lunar orbit. Enhanced by his neural link, he could just make out the alien vessel's sleek, angular shapes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, arranged in a precise formation that screamed military discipline. "What do you want?" he whispered. 17 minutes later, Ash stepped off the shuttle into the controlled chaos of the Nexus Earth's hidden command center, buried deep within the Tycho crater on the moon's far side. Armed guards escorted him through security checkpoints, with an urgency that confirmed the gravity of the situation. In the central command chamber, representatives from Earth's Defense Council were gathered around a holographic display. Admiral Mira Salas, commander of Earth's concealed fleet, looked up as Ash entered. "Carter, about time." Ash nodded to her. They had history, not all of it pleasant. "Admiral, bringing a maintenance specialist into a first contact situation seems unorthodox. Cut the act. Carter." Admiral Salas's expression was granite. "We all know what you did before you decided to play janitor." Director Tamsin Gray stepped forward, her tall frame and dark complexion imposing even in the room full of military personnel. "The VAR-RE delegation will dock in 30 minutes. They've agreed to a formal reception, but insisted you be present." She handed Ash a neural key. "This will temporarily restore your security clearances and access to the Veil protocols. Find out how they identified you and what vulnerability they exploited." Ash inserted the key into his neural port, wincing as dormant systems reactivated in his mind. Data streams he hadn't accessed in years flooded his consciousness defense grids, satellite networks, the complex algorithmic patterns of the Veil itself. It was like stepping back into a life he'd deliberately walked away from. "The VAR-RE ships," he said, accessing the sensor feeds. "They're using some kind of stealth technology I've never seen before. It's not just hiding their signature, it's actively distorting our perception." Admiral Salas nodded grimly. "Their lead vessel alone carries enough firepower to level a small continent, based on our energy readings. And there are 7 more in high orbit." "What do we know about them?" Ash asked. Tamsin projected a series of intercepted transmissions. "They're a warrior culture with a complex honor system based around hunting. Their communiques reference something called tag law repeatedly. As best we can translate, they believe in a sacred right to hunt worthy prey, and they seem to consider us eligible." Ash studied the data. "They're testing us. The apex right they mentioned, it's some kind of formalized challenge. They want to see if we're worthy of respect or conquest. Their exact terms," Admiral Salas said, "are that Earth must stand firm through 3 hunt cycles or be considered to have accepted submission to the Ajari Dominion, which appears to be a larger political entity they're associated with." "So we're being evaluated," Ash murmured. "But why me? Why—" An alert flashed across the command displays. The VAR-RE shuttle had requested final approach clearance. "No more time for questions," Tamsin said. "You're on Carter, first contact protocols. Try not to get us all killed." The VAR-RE delegation stepped through the airlock with predatory grace. Ash, standing at the forefront of Earth's reception committee, fought to keep his expression neutral as he took in their appearance. They were unmistakably alien, yet disturbingly familiar humanoid, but taller and more lithe than humans, with skin that shifted subtly in coloration like oil on water. Their eyes were the most striking feature, large, vertically pupilled, and gleaming with an intelligence that felt ancient and calculating. The leader stepped forward. She, and Ash was reasonably certain this was a female of their species, stood nearly 7 feet tall, her posture regal and intimidating. Intricate armor covered her form, seemingly made of materials both organic and technological, with symbols etched into every surface. A complex headdress framed her face, and what looked like ceremonial weapons hung at her sides. "I am Kalith Nira," she announced, her voice resonating with harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. Yet, the universal translator rendered it perfectly. "Apex Huntress of the VAR-RE, shield-bearer of the 8th Dominion, voice of the Hunt Moon." She fixed her gaze directly on Ash, ignoring everyone else in the room. "And you are Ashton James Carter, architect of the adaptive shield, weaver of the veil, you who hide your teeth until the moment of striking." A murmur went through the Earth delegation. Few people knew Ash's full name and former title. He stepped forward, the diplomatic training from his former life kicking in automatically. "On behalf of Earth, I welcome you, Caliph Naira. I'm curious how you came to know me by that designation." Caliph's mouth curved in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for comfort. "Your signal signature is distinct, Ash Carter. Your defensive architecture bears the mark of your mind unique, as all worthy prey must be." Prey. Admiral Solace stepped forward, hand instinctively moving toward the sidearm she wasn't currently wearing. "Earth is a sovereign world, not game to be hunted." Caliph shifted her gaze briefly to the Admiral, then back to Ash. "The apex right is not mere hunting. It is the sacred test by which the Ajari Dominion evaluates new civilizations. 3 cycles of the hunt, 3 opportunities to prove your species' worth. And if we refuse this test," Tamsin asked carefully, "then the Ajari will assume your submission, as is their right under the Compact of Worlds." Caliph's tone suggested this was simply stating an obvious fact. "Your technology signature has been detected. Once noticed, all civilizations must either prove their strength or accept protection." Ash studied her carefully. Something about her phrasing caught his attention. "You speak of the Ajari as separate from yourselves. Are the Vari not part of this dominion?" A subtle tension rippled through Caliph's form. "We serve as their hunters, as we have for millennia. The Ajari administrate, the Vari hunt. This is the way of things." "And what exactly does this hunt entail?" Ash asked. "I assume you're not proposing to literally chase humans through the woods with spears." For the first time, something like amusement flickered across Caliph's features. "The apex right takes many forms, adapted to each species' strengths. For your people, who cloak yourselves in technology and misdirection, the hunt will test your ingenuity, your adaptive capabilities." She gestured, and one of her companions stepped forward, activating a holographic display that bloomed between them. It showed a complex 3-dimensional game board with moving pieces of light. "A demonstration," Caliph said. "This is a simple sensor puzzle from our juvenile training. Perhaps your interface specialist might attempt it." The challenge was obvious. Ash glanced at Tamsin, who gave a slight nod. The puzzle was a network of interconnected nodes, each pulsing with different frequencies of light. As Ash studied it, he realized it was a representation of a detection grid, not unlike the systems he had designed for Earth's defense. The objective appeared to be to create a pathway through the grid without triggering the connecting sensors. His neural interface allowed him to analyze the patterns rapidly. Within moments, he had identified the solution, a counterintuitive approach that required triggering specific nodes in sequence to create a cascading blind spot. Ash reached out and touched the hologram, executing the solution with quick, precise movements. The grid flashed and then reorganized itself into a new configuration. He had passed the first level. Without hesitation, he tackled the second configuration, then the third. Each was progressively more complex, but the underlying principles remained the same. It was about understanding the system's rules and then finding the exceptions, the gaps, the moments of vulnerability. After the 7th level, Caliph raised her hand and the hologram dissolved. "Sufficient," she said, and there was something new in her tone, a hint of respect, perhaps even excitement. She reached to her belt and removed what appeared to be a small medallion. With a formal gesture, she pressed it against the back of her hand, where it left a faint luminescent mark. Then, to the surprise of everyone present, she stepped forward and pressed the same medallion against Ash's hand. "What is this?" Ash asked, looking at the glowing symbol now etched onto his skin. "The tag mark," Kalith replied. "By the ancient laws of the Vari, I have claimed first right to hunt you. You have shown yourself worthy prey." Admiral Solace stepped forward again, her posture defensive. "This is outrageous. We did not agree to—" "It's fine, Admiral," Ash interrupted, studying the mark. His mind was racing, connecting patterns, looking for leverage. The formal nature of the gesture, the specific use of the term tag, it hinted at a system of rules that might be manipulated. Looking directly at Kalith, he made a decision that was equal parts calculation and instinct. "If you've tagged me," he said with deliberate casualness, "then I suppose I should tag you back." He touched the glowing mark on his hand, and then reached out, his fingers lightly brushing against Kalith's armored forearm. "I tag you, wife." The chamber went utterly silent. Kalith's eyes widened in what appeared to be genuine shock. Her companions exchanged glances that ranged from confusion to what might have been alarm. When Kalith spoke again, her voice had lost some of its harmonic certainty. You invoke the bond tag. Do you understand what this means?" "Not entirely," Ash admitted, maintaining his calm demeanor, despite the frantic signals he was receiving from both Tamsin and Admiral Solace in his peripheral vision. "But I'm guessing it's significant within your cultural framework. Perhaps you could explain." Kalith seemed to struggle for words, an apparent first for her. "The bond tag is an ancient provision within the tag law. If prey marks a hunter with intent of life alliance, the hunt must be temporarily suspended pending investigation of sincerity." One of Kalith's companions stepped forward, clearly agitated. "This is manipulation. They have studied our ways in secret to exploit our sacred laws." "I assure you," Ash said smoothly, "this is purely coincidental. On Earth, responding to a tag with another tag is simply good manners." A third Var-Re, who had remained silent until now, activated a communication device. "The Ajari representatives must be informed of this development. They will want to evaluate whether this constitutes a legitimate invocation or an attempt to circumvent the apex right." Kalith raised a hand for silence, her gaze never leaving Ash's face. "Regardless of intent, the tag law is absolute. Until the Ajari render judgment, the bond tag creates a formal pause in proceedings." She straightened to her full height. "Ash, Carter of Earth, do you claim to be sincere in this tag? Or do you admit to manipulation of our sacred traditions?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Ash knew he was walking a diplomatic tightrope without a net. If he admitted to manipulation, he would likely invalidate whatever protection the bond tag offered. If he claimed sincerity in what was essentially a blind guess about alien customs, he might be committing Earth to something far beyond his authority. But in that moment, looking into Kalith's alien yet somehow readable expression, Ash made another intuitive leap. "I invoked the bond tag without full knowledge of its implications," he said carefully. "But I did so with sincere intent to establish a dialogue rather than a hunt. If that constitutes a valid basis for the tradition, then yes, I am sincere." Kalith's expression shifted subtly. "Then, as dictated by the ancient compact between Var-Re and Ajari, I must honor the temporary stay of the hunt. We will withdraw to our vessels and await the Ajari judgment." She turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Ash with an unreadable expression. "You are either extraordinarily lucky or dangerously clever. Ash Carter. Perhaps both. We shall see which serves you better in the cycles to come." After the Var-Re delegation had departed, the Earth representatives erupted into a chaotic debate. Admiral Solace was furious. Tamsin was calculating risks, and various governmental representatives were demanding explanations. "What the hell were you thinking, Carter?" Admiral Solace demanded. "You've potentially committed Earth to some kind of alien marriage compact." "I was buying time," Ash replied calmly. "And potentially creating a wedge between the Var-Re and these Ajari they serve." Tamsin studied him thoughtfully. You saw something in their interaction, didn't you? Ash nodded. The Vari speak of the Ajari with respect, but there's tension there. They're enforcers, not equals, and enforcers can sometimes be turned if you give them a reason to question their masters. That's a dangerous game, Admiral Solace warned. Less dangerous than letting them hunt us like animals, Ash countered. Besides, I don't think Kalith was being entirely forthcoming about what the apex right really means. What makes you say that? Tamsin asked. Just a feeling. The way she distinguished between the Vari and the Ajari. The subtle shifts in her posture when discussing the Dominion. Ash looked toward the viewport, where the alien ships hung in lunar orbit like predators watching a watering hole. I think we need to learn a lot more about the relationship between Hunter and Administrator before we decide our next move. Admiral Solace shook her head. Well, you've certainly volunteered yourself for that job. Haven't you, wife? For God's sake. Ash shrugged, a ghost of a smile crossing his features. Go big or go extinct, Admiral. The intercom chimed with an urgent alert. The Vari flagship is requesting another communication. They say the Ajari High Commissioner has arrived and demands immediate audience. Tamsin and Ash exchanged glances. That was too fast for a normal response from whatever governing authority the Ajari represented. They were already here, Ash realized, watching from the shadows. Prepare for another reception, Admiral Solace ordered. And Carter, try not to propose to anyone else today. The Ajari delegation could not have presented a more striking contrast to the Var-Ray hunters, where the Var-Ray had been organic, primal, and intense. The Ajari were sleek, polished, and coldly precise. Their forms were vaguely humanoid, but seemed almost artificially perfect symmetrical features. Immaculate attire that resembled business formal wear, yet shimmered with embedded technology, and expressions of practiced neutrality. Their leader stepped forward with measured grace, tall and imposing, with skin the color of burnished platinum and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they observed. He radiated authority without needing to assert it. I am Archon Sirach Vale, he announced, his voice melodious, yet somehow devoid of warmth. Boundary Commissioner of the Orion Frontier for the Ajari Dominion. I come to address the irregularity in the commencement of the apex right. His gaze fixed on Ash with unnerving intensity. You are the one who invoked the bond tag provision. Interesting. Our records indicate you have been designated as Earth's interface specialist. Yet your neural signature matches a different classification entirely. Ash felt a chill run down his spine. There was something familiar about the way Sirach studied him, as if they had encountered each other before. I served in multiple capacities before my current role, Ash replied carefully. Indeed. Sirach's mouth curved into what approximated a smile, though it never reached his eyes. The Vari are impressive hunters, but they sometimes lack nuance in their interpretation of data. The bond tag provision was established for legitimate cultural exchange between compatible species, not as a tactical delay mechanism. He gestured, and a holographic document materialized in the air between them, ancient-looking script, alongside modern annotations. The Ajari Judgment Council has reviewed your invocation and found it procedurally valid, but substantively questionable. To resolve this ambiguity, we propose a compromise. The apex right will proceed as scheduled, but with modified parameters acknowledging your creative interpretation of our customs. Admiral Solace stepped forward. Before we discuss modifications to a ritual we never agreed to participate in, perhaps you could explain why Earth is being subjected to this rite at all. We have made no hostile moves against either the Vari or the Ajari Dominion. Sirach's expression remained placid. The apex rite is not punishment. Admiral, it is evaluation. All technological civilizations within range of Dominion space must demonstrate their worthiness for independence, or accept administrative guidance. This is the foundation of galactic stability. And if we simply refuse, Tamsin asked. Refusal is interpreted as submission, Serac replied smoothly. The Dominion does not force protection upon unwilling civilizations, directly. But unprotected worlds often find themselves facing unfortunate circumstances that eventually necessitate intervention. The threat, though veiled, was unmistakable. What modifications do you propose to the right? Ash asked, bringing the conversation back to the immediate issue. Serac seemed pleased by the question. In acknowledgement of the Bontag, we will permit Earth's designated representative, you, Ash Carter, to participate actively in the hunt cycles, rather than merely serving as quarry. Each cycle will test a different aspect of your civilization's capability, with specific objectives and rules. He turned to Kalith, who had entered silently with the Ajari delegation and stood apart, her posture rigid. Apex Huntress Kalith will oversee the rite, as is traditional. Her evaluation will determine Earth's status. And what prevents the evaluation from being prejudiced? Ash asked. All hunt data is recorded in the Legitimacy Core, Serac explained. The most sacred repository of the Dominion, where all rights and standings are verified. It is incorruptible, immutable, the foundation of our civilization's integrity. Ash noted the subtle tension in Kalith's posture at these words. There was something there, something important. Very well, Ash said, making another calculated decision. I accept the modified Apex right on behalf of Earth, with one additional condition: complete transparency of evaluation criteria before each hunt cycle begins. Serac's expression flickered briefly surprise, perhaps, or annoyance before returning to its practiced neutrality. A reasonable request, granted. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Ash with that same unnerving intensity. I look forward to observing your performance. Ash Carter, it has been some time since we encountered a species with your particular blend of capabilities. After the delegations had departed, Ash found himself in a secure briefing room with Admiral Solace, Director Gray, and a select group of Earth's defense strategists. The atmosphere was tense. You've committed us to a contest we know almost nothing about, Admiral Solace said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Based on your gut feeling about alien politics. We were already committed, Ash pointed out. The choice was between fighting blind or gaining some agency in the process. Ash is right, Tamsin interjected. The Bontag maneuver, however unorthodox, has given us leverage we didn't have before. And I'm more concerned about why Archon Serac seemed to recognize Ash specifically. Ash nodded. The same question had been bothering him. There's history there that I can't account for. My work on the Veil was classified to the highest levels. Even if they detected our defenses, they shouldn't have been able to link them directly to me. Admiral Solace pulled up a secure file on the briefing room's display. After the initial contact, I had our intelligence division run a deep background sweep on your service record. There's an anomaly, a sealed incident report from 7 years ago. Operation Silverfish. Ash frowned. I don't recall any operation by that name. That's the anomaly, Admiral Solace said. You were listed as primary architect, but the details are compartmentalized beyond even my access level. Whatever happened, it was serious enough to lead to your eventual departure from active service. A memory gap, Tamsin suggested. Selective redaction. Possible, Ash conceded. There was a period about 7 years ago, after a deep cover mission, where I experienced some cognitive discontinuity. The medical team attributed it to stress and neural interface complications. Admiral Solace's expression hardened. So you're saying our fate might hinge on a confrontation you don't even remember having? I'm saying there are pieces missing, Ash replied. And finding them might be as important as preparing for these hunt cycles. Tamsin studied the limited data they had on the Var-Ree and Ajari. Speaking of which, we need to understand what we're facing. The Var-Ray appear to be the muscle, but the Ajari are clearly pulling the strings. Their technology is advanced, but not impossibly so. What troubles me is this legitimacy core they mentioned. It sounds like some kind of blockchain-based legal system that automates rights enforcement. Which means it can be hacked, Ash murmured, his mind already working on possibilities. First things first, Admiral Solace said firmly. We need to prepare for whatever this first hunt cycle entails. Carter, I'm officially reinstating your commission and assigning you as Earth's representative for this apex right. Director Gray will serve as your strategic advisor. Ash nodded, accepting the inevitable. I'll need full access to the Veil architecture and all associated defense systems. If I'm going to represent Earth in a high-stakes game, I'd like to know what cards we're holding. Granted, Admiral Solace said. But understand this if you fail. If Earth is forced to submit to this dominion, I'll hold you personally responsible. Fair enough, Ash replied. But I don't intend to fail. As the meeting adjourned, Tamsin lingered behind with Ash. There's something else troubling me, she said quietly. The timing. Why now Earth has been developing its space capabilities for decades? Why did they wait until this precise moment to initiate contact? Maybe we finally crossed some technological threshold they monitor, Ash suggested. Or maybe, Tamsin said, someone wanted them to find us now, specifically. Someone who knew enough about your past to put you directly in their sights. The thought was unsettling, but Ash couldn't dismiss it. Coincidences of this magnitude rarely happen naturally. Someone or something had orchestrated this encounter, and he needed to find out why before the first hunt cycle began. I need to see Calith, Ash said suddenly. Alone. Tamsin raised an eyebrow. Your wife. Ash smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Very funny. But yes, I think our Apex Huntress might be more forthcoming without her Ajari overseers present. That's risky, Tamsin warned. So is going into a fight without understanding the rules, Ash countered. Besides, I have a theory I want to test. Arranging a private meeting with Calith proved surprisingly straightforward. The Var-Ri, for all their predatory nature, appeared to respect direct approaches. Within hours, Ash found himself aboard a neutral station in lunar orbit, waiting in a sparsely furnished chamber that somehow managed to feel both sterile and threatening. Calith entered alone, her armor somewhat less formal than during their first encounter, though still impressively intimidating. She studied Ash with those vertically pupilled eyes, her head tilting slightly in what he was beginning to recognize as an expression of curiosity. You requested this meeting outside of formal protocols, she said, her voice carrying those same strange harmonics. Unusual for prey to seek the hunter. I'm not typical prey, Ash replied, and I suspect you're not a typical hunter. Explain. Ash gestured to the simple table between them. May we sit Earth custom for conversations of importance? Calith hesitated, then nodded, folding her tall frame into the chair across from him with unexpected grace. Ash took the opportunity to study her more closely, the subtle shifts of color beneath her skin, the intricate markings on her armor that seemed both decorative and functional, the controlled power in every movement. The apex right, he began. It's supposed to determine whether Earth is worthy of independence or requires Ajari protection. But I suspect the Var-Ri and the Ajari have different interpretations of what that really means. Calith's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in her eyes. The hunt serves the Dominion, she said carefully. This is the way it has always been. Always, Ash pressed. Or just for as long as you've been taught to remember. A subtle tension rippled through Calith's form. You speak dangerously, Ash Carter. I speak honestly, he countered. The Var-Ri are warriors, hunters with a code of honor. The Ajari are administrators, bureaucrats who never dirty their own hands. It seems an uneven partnership. It is not your place to question the order of the galaxy, Calith said. But there was less conviction in her tone than before. Ash decided to take a risk. The data the Ajari showed you about Earth, was it accurate? Did it match what you've observed directly? Kalith went very still, her alien features suddenly difficult to read. For a moment, Ash thought he had miscalculated. Then, in a voice so low it was barely audible, "No, the preliminary reports indicated a primitive species barely capable of local space travel. The defense systems we encountered were unexpected. Because someone wanted them to be," Ash said. "Someone has been feeding the Ajari distorted information about Earth, information that would make us appear to be easy prey." "You have evidence of this claim?" Kalith asked, a new intensity in her gaze. "Not yet, but I will." Ash leaned forward slightly. "The first hunt cycle, what will it entail?" Kalith seemed to debate internally before answering. "A surface chase across your moon titan. Survival in an environment hostile to both our species. The objective is to reach a designated extraction point while evading pursuit. And if I succeed, if you reach the extraction point without being captured 3 consecutive times, you win the cycle." Kalith's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Though no prey has achieved this against a Vari hunting party in 17 generations, there's always a first time," Ash said with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "One more question, this bond tag between us. What does it really signify among your people?" The question seemed to catch Kalith off guard. A subtle shift of color washed across her features, embarrassment. "Perhaps. The bond tag is ancient, rarely invoked," she said slowly. "It originated when the Vari first encountered species of comparable intelligence. If prey demonstrated exceptional cunning or courage, a hunter could offer permanent alliance rather than conquest. Over time, this evolved into a formal provision for genetic and cultural exchange." "Marriage," Ash said. "A simplification, but essentially correct." Kalith fixed him with an unblinking stare. "You claimed sincerity in your invocation. Was this truth?" Now it was Ash's turn to be caught off guard. "I was sincere in seeking an alternative to conflict," he said carefully. "The specific cultural implications were not fully understood at the time." "Yet you have not retracted the tag," Kalith observed. "Neither have you," Ash countered. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her alien features. "Perhaps we are both curious to see where this unusual hunt leads." She rose to her feet in a fluid motion. "Prepare yourself, Ash Carter. The first cycle begins in 26 Earth hours. I will hunt you as tradition demands, with respect, but without mercy." Ash stood as well, meeting her gaze steadily. "I look forward to surprising you." As Kalith turned to leave, Ash called after her. "The bond tag, does it offer any protection beyond delaying the right?" She paused at the doorway. "It creates a bond of accountability between hunter and prey. Should either come to harm through treachery, rather than honest contest." She trailed off meaningfully. "Meaning, if someone interferes with the fair conduct of the hunt, both bondholders would have cause for redress under Dominion law." Kalith finished. "An interesting insurance policy. Wouldn't you agree?" With that cryptic observation, she departed, leaving Ash alone with the distinct impression that their conversation had been more revealing than either of them had initially intended. Upon returning to Earth Command, Ash found Tamsin waiting for him with an expectant expression. "Well, did your diplomatic spousal visit yield any insights?" "Several," Ash replied, quickly summarizing his conversation with Kalith. "Most importantly, she confirmed that the Ajari intelligence on Earth has been consistently wrong, deliberately so. I suspect." Tamsin's expression grew serious. "That aligns with some analysis our team has been doing. The Vari ship's approach vector couldn't have missed our outer system defenses by accident. Someone guided them in through paths only someone with intimate knowledge of our security architecture could know." "Someone like me," Ash said quietly. "Or someone with access to your work," Tamsin agreed. "The question is, why? What does anyone gain by manipulating both sides into this confrontation?" Before Ash could respond, his neural interface pinged with a priority alert. Admiral Solace was requesting their immediate presence in the command center. They arrived to find the command staff gathered around a holographic display of Saturn's moon Titan, a desolate, orange-hazed world of methane lakes and icy mountains. Admiral Solace looked up as they entered, her expression grim. "The Vari have formally announced the parameters for the first hunt cycle," she said, without preamble. "Titan surface, 72 hours. Extraction point at the Krakenmare shoreline. Carter will be dropped at the equatorial highlands with basic survival gear. The Vari hunting party will deploy 30 minutes later. Temperature ranges from -180 to -290 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere is nitrogen and methane. Surface pressure 1.45 times Earth normal." One of the science officers added, "Basically a frozen hell." "Both you and the Vari will need environmental suits," Tamsin observed. "Which gives us an opportunity," Ash said, studying the topographical map of Titan. "Our adaptive environment systems are designed for exactly these conditions. If I can stay ahead long enough to reach the northern polar region, I can use the methane lakes to mask my thermal signature." Admiral Solace nodded. "We've already begun prepping a modified explorer suit with enhanced camouflage capabilities. But there's a complication. The Ajari are insisting on providing the transport vessels for both parties, ostensibly to ensure fair play." "They don't trust us," Ash murmured. "Or they don't want us getting too close to their technology. Either way, you'll be operating with limited Earth support once you're on the surface." Tamsin warned, "We can maintain communication, but direct intervention would violate the right parameters." Ash studied the map more closely, his mind already calculating routes, contingencies, survival tactics. "What about autonomous systems? Are there any restrictions on what I can bring with me?" "Personal equipment only. Nothing that could be considered a weapon," Admiral Solace replied, "though their definition of weapon seems focused on devices that cause direct harm." "Good," Ash said, a plan beginning to form. "I'll need access to our satellite fabrication lab. If I'm going to survive this hunt, I'll need to bring some of our garbage with me." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Ash worked tirelessly with Earth's engineering teams, adapting and modifying equipment, programming autonomous systems, and studying everything they could gather about Titan's challenging environment. Tamsin found him in the fabrication lab in the early hours of the morning, surrounded by disassembled components and holographic schematics. He was modifying what appeared to be standard waste recycling drones, the same units used to collect orbital debris around Earth. "Garbage collectors?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Ash smiled tiredly. "The most overlooked technology is often the most useful. These units are designed to identify, track, and retrieve small objects in complex environments. With some reprogramming, they become your eyes and ears," Tamsin finished, understanding dawning. "Clever. But will the Vari consider it cheating?" "They're hunting tools, not weapons," Ash pointed out. "And if the Vari are half the hunters they claim to be, they'll be bringing their own tracking technology." He paused, looking up from his work. "Any progress on Operation Silverfish?" Tamsin's expression turned serious. "Some. The records are heavily redacted, but we've confirmed it was a deep cover operation in the Kuiper Belt about 7 years ago. You were sent to investigate an anomalous signal that matched no known human origin. And the mission was abruptly classified beyond top secret. You returned with partial memory loss, which was attributed to neural interface damage during a containment procedure." She hesitated. "Ash, whatever you found out there was significant enough that someone went to extraordinary lengths to bury it." Ash sat back, fragments of memories stirring at the edges of his consciousness, a distant facility, a sense of discovery, and then nothing concrete, just a lingering sense of importance. "You think it's connected to the Ajari to Archon Sirach?" "I think it's too coincidental not to be," Tamsin replied. "But we're running out of time to investigate further. Your transport to Titan leaves in 3 hours." Ash nodded, returning his attention to the modified drones. "Then let's make sure I come back from this hunt with more than just my survival to show for it." The Ajari transport was a marvel of engineering, sleek, efficient, and completely intimidating in its alien perfection. Ash sat alone in the passenger compartment, surrounded by his authorized equipment, the modified environmental suit, a basic survival pack, and 3 innocuous-looking spheres that contained his reprogrammed waste retrieval drones. As the ship broke orbit and set course for Saturn, Ash reviewed the hunt parameters one final time through his neural interface. The rules were deceptively simple. Reach the extraction point at Kraken Mare within 72 hours without being captured by the Var-Re hunting party 3 consecutive times. Each capture would result in a 2-hour penalty period before he could resume his journey. The transport's internal speakers activated with a soft chime. "We approach Titan. Prepare for atmospheric entry." Ash donned his environmental suit, checking each seal meticulously. The Earth engineers had outdone themselves. The suit was a masterpiece of adaptive technology, capable of withstanding Titan's brutal conditions while providing enhanced mobility and sensory input. Most importantly, it contained several features that weren't immediately apparent from its exterior. The descent through Titan's thick atmosphere was remarkably smooth, a testament to Ajari technology. As they approached the surface, Ash got his first real look at the alien landscape through the transport's viewport, a weird, orange-tinted world of ice mountains and liquid methane, perpetually shrouded in haze. The ship settled onto a flat plain surrounded by jagged ice formations. The hatch opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, revealing the alien world beyond. "Equatorial Highlands reached," the ship's system announced. "Hunt participant disembarkation authorized. Countdown to hunt commencement, 30 minutes. Ash stepped onto Titan's surface, the gravity slightly lower than Earth's, giving a subtle bounce to his movements. Through his helmet, he could see the orange haze stretching to the horizon, illuminated by the distant, diminished sun. He activated his suit's enhanced sensors and began moving immediately. The 30-minute head start was crucial. He needed to put as much distance as possible between himself and the landing site before the Var-Re hunting party arrived. As he navigated the alien terrain, Ash deployed his 3 modified drones, sending them in different directions to establish a perimeter surveillance network. Through his neural interface, he could access their sensor feeds, effectively expanding his awareness of the surrounding territory. 28 minutes into his head start, one of the drones detected an anomaly, an energy signature that matched neither his equipment nor any known Var-Re technology. It was brief, just a pulse, emanating from a ridge approximately 5 kilometers to the west of his position. "That's not supposed to be there," Ash murmured, changing course to investigate. He reached the ridge just as his suit's chronometer indicated the hunting party would be landing. Crouching behind an ice formation, he scanned the area where the drone had detected the anomaly. At first, nothing seemed out of place, just more of Titan's desolate landscape. Then he saw it, a small, nearly invisible device embedded in the ice. It was broadcasting on a frequency that would interfere with standard navigation systems, creating a subtle gravitational distortion that could send someone off course without them realizing it. Not part of the hunt, Ash realized. Someone's rigging the game. Before he could investigate further, his perimeter drones alerted him to movement from the landing site. The Var-Re hunting party had arrived and was already spreading out in a search pattern that suggested both experience and coordination. Ash had a choice: continue investigating the mysterious device or focus on the immediate threat of the hunters. With reluctance, he opted for the latter, setting one drone to monitor the device while he retreated northward toward the planned extraction point. The hunt had begun in earnest, and already it was proving more complex than anyone had anticipated. For the next several hours, Ash moved methodically across Titan's challenging terrain, using the natural features to mask his progress. The environmental suit performed admirably, adapting to the extreme cold and providing enhanced traction on the icy surface. Through his drone network, he kept track of the Vari hunting party, 5 hunters in total, led by Kalith herself. Their hunting technique was impressive, a coordinated sweep that methodically eliminated possible hiding places and escape routes. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost impossible in the bulky environmental suits necessitated by Titan's hostile conditions. As night fell on this part of Titan, a deeper darkness in an already dim world, Ash found himself in a narrow ravine that offered some protection from the constant methane wind. He took the opportunity to check the data his drone had collected on the mysterious device. The analysis was troubling. The device appeared to be part of a larger network. Similar energy signatures were detectable at intervals across his planned route to the extraction point. Together, they created what could only be described as a herding mechanism, subtly guiding him into a predetermined path. "Someone wants to make sure I lose," Ash murmured. "But who, the Vari, or someone else?" His contemplation was interrupted by an urgent alert from his perimeter drones. The hunting party had changed formation, moving with increased speed directly toward his position. Somehow, they had detected him despite his precautions. Ash moved quickly, abandoning the ravine for more exposed but less predictable terrain. As he crested a ridge of ice, he caught his first direct glimpse of the hunters' armored figures, moving with predatory intent, their own sensors scanning the landscape. At their head was Kalith, unmistakable even in her environmental suit. She paused, her helmet turning in his direction, and for a moment, Ash had the eerie sensation that she was looking directly at him, despite the considerable distance between them. Then, she raised a hand, signaling to her companions, and the hunting party changed direction away from Ash's position. Confusion gave way to understanding as Ash observed their new trajectory. They weren't moving away from him. They were circling to cut off his most obvious escape route. It was a classic flanking maneuver, executed with precision. Ash smiled despite the danger. This was a fair hunt. Kalith was pursuing him, according to the agreed rules, using skill and strategy rather than unfair advantages. It was the mysterious devices that concerned him, not the hunters themselves. Making a quick decision, he sent one of his drones on a decoy path to draw the hunters further from his position, while he doubled back toward the nearest of the interference devices. If he could understand their purpose, perhaps he could turn them to his advantage. Hours passed in this deadly game of cat and mouse across Titan's frozen wastes. Twice, Ash came perilously close to capture as the hunting party demonstrated why the Vari were feared across the galaxy. Each time, he managed to evade them through a combination of environmental knowledge, technological adaptation, and pure human ingenuity. By the beginning of the second day, Ash had confirmed his suspicions. The interference devices formed a network that was gradually herding both him and the hunting party toward a specific region, a maze-like formation of ice canyons that would severely restrict movement and make capture almost inevitable. More troublingly, he had detected signs of instability in those same canyons, microfractures in the ice structures that suggested they might collapse under the right conditions. If he and the hunters were deliberately being led there, "It's a trap," he realized. "Someone wants this hunt to end in disaster." As if confirming his assessment, his neural interface detected a new signal, a deep space transmission directed toward Titan from what appeared to be an Ajari vessel in high orbit. The signal targeted the interference network, increasing its output. One of his drones, positioned near the canyon entrance, detected a subtle shift in the ice structure, the beginnings of what could become a catastrophic collapse if the hunters pursued him into the narrow passages. Ash made a decision that went against every survival instinct. Instead of continuing toward the extraction point, he changed course to intercept the hunting party directly. It didn't take long for them to detect his approach. The hunters spread out in a containment formation, clearly expecting a trick or diversion. Kalith moved to the center, her posture radiating wary curiosity at this unexpected development. When he was within communication range, Ash opened a direct channel to Kalith's suit. "This hunt has been compromised," he said without preamble. "There's a network of interference devices across the terrain, and they're being used to manipulate our movements." There was a pause before Kalith responded, her voice carrying that same harmonic quality even through the communication system. "Explain." "We're being herded toward the northern canyons," Ash continued, transmitting the drone data to support his claim. "The ice structures there are unstable. If we continue on our current trajectories, we'll be trapped in a collapse." Another pause, longer this time. "Then, you reveal this knowing it will likely result in your capture." "Why?" "Because this isn't part of the Apex right," Ash replied. "Someone is interfering with the hunt. Someone who wants it to end in tragedy, rather than fair contest." Kalith signaled to her hunting party to hold position as she processed this information. "These devices are not Vari technology," she acknowledged after studying the data. "Their energy signature is consistent with Ajari gravitational manipulation systems. Specifically, a system known as the Ivory Eye," Ash said, the name coming to him from somewhere in the fragmented memories of his past. "A network designed to create localized gravity distortions for construction purposes, or for sabotage." Kalith's helmet tilted slightly, in what Ash was learning to recognize as surprise. "You are familiar with Ajari technology that is not widely known outside the Dominion." "Apparently I am," Ash agreed, equally surprised by his own knowledge. "Though I couldn't tell you how." A new voice joined their communication channel, cold, precise, and immediately recognizable. "How disappointing," Archon Sirach Vale said. "I had hoped for a more natural resolution to this contest." "Archon," Kalith acknowledged, her tone suddenly formal. "Your presence in this hunt was not announced." "Merely observing. Apex Huntress," Sirach replied smoothly. "As is my right as Boundary Commissioner. Though I must express concern at the Prey's attempts to manipulate the outcome through false accusations." "The interference network is real," Ash countered, transmitting the drone data on an open channel, so both Kalith and Sirach could access it. "And it's driving us toward an unstable region that could collapse at any moment." "Primitive sensors often misinterpret advanced technology," Sirach dismissed. "What you've detected is merely the standard monitoring grid that accompanies all Apex rights to ensure fair play." Kalith had gone very still, her posture suggesting internal conflict. "The hunt must proceed according to tradition," she said finally, "without interference from either participant or observer." "Of course," Sirach agreed silkily. "I would never dream of interfering with a sacred hunt. Please, continue as if I had never spoken." The channel went silent, but Ash could sense Sirach hadn't truly departed. He was watching, waiting for his trap to spring. Kalith approached Ash directly, close enough that they could communicate without broadcasting. "You claim the bond tag with sincerity," she said, her voice pitched low. "Now prove it. If what you say is true, then we are both in danger from forces beyond the hunt." "I can deactivate the interference network," Ash offered. "But I'll need time and direct access to at least one of the devices." Kalith considered this, then made a gesture that her hunting party clearly understood. They moved back, giving Ash and Kalith space. "I will grant you temporary immunity from capture," she declared formally, "until this matter of interference is resolved. But know this, Ash Carter, if you deceive me, the consequences will exceed mere loss of the hunt." "Fair enough," Ash agreed. "Follow me." Together, they approached the nearest interference device. As Ash worked to disable it, Kalith maintained vigilant watch, her sensors scanning constantly for any sign of treachery or external threat. "The bond tag," she said unexpectedly. It was clever of you to invoke it. Few outsiders understand its significance to the Var-Re. I didn't, Ash admitted, focusing on the delicate work of bypassing the device's security measures. It was an educated guess based on your reaction to my tag comment. Yet you have not retracted it, despite now understanding its implications. Ash paused, looking up at her alien features visible through her helmet visor. Neither have you, he pointed out again. Perhaps, Kalith said slowly. We are both curious where this path leads. She echoed her earlier statement, but with a different inflection that suggested deeper consideration. Before Ash could respond, the device under his hands emitted a high-pitched whine. Proximity trigger, he warned, yanking his hands back. Someone's activated a security protocol remotely. The ice beneath them shuddered. In the distance, a low rumbling began. The canyon walls were beginning to collapse. We need to move, Kalith ordered, signaling her hunting party. Away from the canyons. Now. They retreated as the rumbling intensified, ice formations cracking and shifting around them. Ash's neural interface registered a rapid sequence of activations throughout the interference network. Someone was triggering a cascading collapse, trying to bury them all beneath tons of Titan ice. As they ran, a particularly violent tremor caused a massive ice formation to split directly in their path. Kalith, slightly ahead of Ash, didn't see the secondary fracture forming beneath her feet until it was too late. The ice gave way, and she plunged into a rapidly widening crevasse. Ash reacted without thinking, diving forward to catch her outstretched hand. The impact nearly pulled him in as well, but he managed to brace himself against a stable section of ice. I have you, he grunted, the environmental suit straining to enhance his strength as he held Kalith's considerable weight. Below her, the crevasse dropped away into darkness, methane vapor swirling ominously. Kalith looked up at him, her alien features unreadable through her helmet. But her voice, when she spoke, carried a note of surprise. You risk yourself to save a hunter. Unusual prey indeed. I don't think either of us is playing the traditional roles anymore, Ash replied, slowly pulling her upward. With a final effort, he hauled her back onto solid ground, just as another tremor shook the area. Together, they scrambled away from the collapsing region, rejoining the rest of the hunting party at a safe distance. As the rumbling subsided, they surveyed the destruction from a ridge overlooking the canyon system. What had once been a maze of ice passages was now a collapsed ruin, clouds of methane vapor rising from the destruction. Had we been in those canyons when the collapse initiated? Kalith began. Exactly, Ash finished. Someone wanted this hunt to end in tragedy, not triumph. Kalith turned to him, her posture reflecting both gratitude and a new respect. You have saved my life, Ash Carter. Among the Var-Re, such a debt carries significant weight. Consider it part of the bond tag, Ash suggested with a slight smile. Spouses generally try to keep each other alive. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Kalith's features. Indeed. And now, I believe we have evidence of interference to present to the Hunt Assessment Council. Will they listen? Ash asked. If Archon Sarak is behind this. The evidence will speak for itself, Kalith assured him. The Legitimacy Core requires truth, regardless of who provides it. She activated her communication system, signaling for extraction. The first hunt cycle is hereby suspended due to external interference. As Apex Huntress, I invoke my right of investigation under the Sacred Tag Law. As they waited for the transport ships to arrive, Ash felt a strange mix of victory and apprehension. They had survived the immediate danger, but the game was clearly larger and more dangerous than he had initially realized. Someone powerful wanted this apex right to fail catastrophically, and they were willing to sacrifice both human and Var-Re lives to achieve that goal. More troublingly, fragments of memory continued to surface in Ash's mind, knowledge of Ajari technology, recognition of Sirach's methods, hints of a past encounter that remained frustratingly out of reach. Whatever had happened during Operation Silverfish 7 years ago, it was becoming increasingly clear that it was directly connected to the current crisis. The extraction ships appeared on the horizon, descending through Titan's hazy atmosphere. Ash turned to Kaleth, a new resolve hardening within him. "When we return to Earth orbit," he said, "there's something I need to show you. Something that might explain why this is happening and how to stop it." Kaleth studied him, then nodded. "Lead, and I will follow. It seems that in this hunt, prey and hunter must become allies." The journey back to Earth orbit passed in tense silence. Aboard the Var-Re command vessel, Ash and Kaleth presented their evidence of the interference network to a skeptical Hunt Assessment Council, a panel of Ajari administrators and Var-Re elders connected via holographic link. The council chambers, even in virtual form, reflected the dichotomy between the two species, one side austere and precise, the other organic and primal. At the center sat Archon Sirach Vale. His expression, one of polite concern, masking what Ash suspected was fury at the disruption of his plans. "These are serious allegations," Sirach said, after they had presented their findings. "To suggest that Ajari monitoring equipment was repurposed for sabotage would require substantial proof." "The evidence is clear," Kaleth countered, displaying the data they had collected. "The interference network was designed to manipulate our movements and trigger a catastrophic collapse in the canyon system. Primitive sensors often misinterpret advanced technology." Sirach repeated his earlier dismissal. "And let us not overlook the convenient timing of this alleged discovery, just as the Earth representative was facing imminent capture." "I was not pursuing capture at that moment," Kaleth stated firmly. "The prey approached voluntarily to warn of danger." "A clever manipulation," Sirach suggested. "Perhaps the bond tag has clouded your judgment, Apex Huntress." A ripple of discomfort passed through the Var-Re members of the council. The implication that a hunter could be manipulated by prey was clearly a grave insult. Before Kaleth could respond, Ash stepped forward. "The data speaks for itself," he said, directing his words to the entire council. "But there's a larger issue at stake. The apex right is meant to be a fair test of a species' worthiness. Interference undermines the very foundation of that test." "An admirable sentiment," Sirach agreed smoothly. "Which is precisely why the Ajari provide neutral oversight. However, without definitive proof that these devices were activated with malicious intent." "The intent is clear from the result," Kaleth interrupted. "Had we followed the manipulated path, both hunter and prey would have perished." The council murmured among themselves, clearly divided. Finally, the eldest of the Var-Re representatives spoke. "The evidence is compelling but inconclusive. As such, we rule that the first hunt cycle must be reattempted under stricter oversight. Both participants will be granted equal preparation time before the cycle recommences." "A fair compromise," Sirach said with a thin smile. "Though perhaps we should consider a different environment for the next attempt. Mercury's glass forests would provide an interesting challenge." Ash felt a chill that had nothing to do with Titan's frozen surface. Mercury, with its extreme temperature variations and treacherous terrain, would be even more dangerous than Titan if someone decided to interfere again. "The council has spoken," Kaleth acknowledged formally, though Ash could sense her frustration. "We will prepare for the new cycle as directed." As the council session ended and the holographic projections faded, Kaleth turned to Ash, speaking quietly. "They did not believe us, or they chose not to." "They believed us," Ash corrected. "They just can't act without more definitive proof. Bureaucracy at its finest." "Then we must obtain such proof before the next cycle," Kaleth said with determination. "You mentioned something you wanted to show me." Ash nodded, checking that they were truly alone before continuing. "I need access to Earth's core defense network, the White Core. It's our version of your legitimacy core, but with a few features I think might interest you. The Ajari will not permit such access, Kaleth warned. It would violate the terms of the right. They don't need to know, Ash replied with a slight smile. After all, I'm just a maintenance specialist showing an honored guest our orbital sanitation facilities. Kaleth's expression shifted to what Ash was beginning to recognize as curiosity. Your garbage collection, an unusual diplomatic overture. Trust me, Ash said. In this case, our trash might be our greatest treasure. Arranging access to the White Core required bypassing several layers of Earth's own security. But Ash's reinstated clearances, combined with some creative interpretation of first contact protocols, eventually granted them passage to a nondescript maintenance station in polar orbit. Sentinel Station Omega, Ash explained as they approached in a small shuttle. Officially listed as a debris monitoring facility, which is true, as far as it goes. The station appeared unremarkable, a typical orbital platform surrounded by arrays of sensors and small maintenance drones. As they docked, Ash noted Kaleth's careful observation of everything around them. "You are showing me your defenses," she said. Not a question, but a statement. "This is unusual trust for someone you met as a hunter." "Sometimes the best defense is selective transparency," Ash replied. "Besides, after what happened on Titan, I think we both have questions about who the real enemy might be." Inside the station, Ash led Kaleth through seemingly ordinary corridors until they reached a secure access point. He placed his hand on a scanner, which pulsed with blue light. "Authorization, Carter? Ashton James? Project Veil Architect? Access Protocol White Raven?" The wall before them seemed to dissolve, revealing a chamber beyond that defied the station's outward appearance. Inside was a vast, spherical room filled with swirling holographic displays and data streams. At the center floated what appeared to be a crystalline structure, pulsing with inner light. "The White Core," Ash said. "Earth's adaptive defense matrix and information repository. Everything we know about potential threats, defensive strategies, and galactic politics is stored here, including some things I apparently forgot." Kaleth stared at the display with what appeared to be genuine awe. "This is unexpected. Your species presents itself as technologically modest, yet this rivals Ajari information architecture. That's the point of the Veil," Ash explained. "We show just enough to be considered developing, but not enough to be seen as a threat. It's a strategy I helped design after something happened. Something I can't fully remember." He approached the central crystal, placing his hand on its surface. "Core, Access Operation Silverfish, Authorization Carter, Full Spectrum." The crystal pulsed, and the holographic displays shifted to show fragments of data mission parameters, sensor logs, personnel files, all heavily redacted or corrupted. "Still locked," Ash murmured in frustration. "Someone really didn't want this information accessible, even to me." Kaleth studied the fragments that were visible. "These coordinates," she said suddenly, pointing to a partial star map. "They correspond to an Ajari outpost in the Kuiper region, one that was allegedly abandoned decades ago." Ash looked at her sharply. "How would you know that?" "It was the site of my first hunt as Apex Huntress," Kaleth replied. "A training exercise in a supposedly empty sector. We were told to expect no resistance, yet." She trailed off, her expression troubled. "Yet you found something," Ash finished for her. "Or someone." Kaleth nodded slowly. "A lone human vessel, observing the outpost. We were ordered to eliminate it as a pirate incursion. I led the assault myself." The pieces began to fall into place in Ash's mind. 7 years ago, a classified mission to investigate an anomalous signal. It wasn't pirates they sent me to investigate, it was you, the Varri. And it was not an abandoned outpost," Kaleth added, the realization clearly disturbing her. "It was an active Ajari listening post monitoring your system. We were both manipulated, Ash turned back to the crystal. Core, cross-reference Operation Silverfish with VAR-RE encounter patterns and Ajari outpost locations. Identify common factors. The displays shifted again, correlating data at impressive speed. Finally, a new image formed a complex network of connections, linking various events, all centered around a single name, Archon Serac Vale. He's been watching us for years, Ash realized, gathering intelligence, placing assets, preparing for something. The Apex Right is merely a pretext, Calith said grimly. A legal framework to justify whatever he truly intends. But why now? What changed to trigger this formal approach after years of covert observation? The answer came not from the Core's analysis, but from a memory that suddenly surfaced in Ash's mind, a fragment of data he'd glimpsed during that long-ago encounter. The adaptive shield, he murmured. It came online fully 3 months ago. The final component of Earth's defense network, a learning system that could identify and counter unknown threats. He looked at Calith. A system that might have eventually detected the Ajari observation posts. So he acts now, before your defenses become too formidable, Calith concluded, using the Apex Right as legal cover for what would otherwise be considered an act of aggression by the greater galactic community. And he's ensuring it fails catastrophically, Ash added. Not just a failed test, but a disaster that could justify immediate intervention. The question is, how do we prove it? Calith's expression shifted to one of determined resolve. Among my people, when a hunt is corrupted, the hunter has the right to challenge the corruptor directly. If I formally challenge Archon Serac, based on the evidence we've gathered, he'd never accept, Ash interrupted. Not directly. He's an administrator, not a warrior. But he would be required to provide a champion, Calith continued. And that would force his hand either reveal his manipulation or risk losing face before the Hunt Assessment Council. Ash considered this, studying the network of connections displayed before them. It could work, but we need more concrete evidence of the interference network, something the Council can't dismiss as misinterpreted data. The next hunt cycle, Calith said. Mercury's glass forests. If Serac attempts the same strategy there, we'll be ready for it, Ash finished. But we'll need to work together. Officially, we're still hunter and prey. Calith studied him for a long moment, then reached out and placed her hand beside his on the crystal surface. The bond tag creates an alliance that transcends the hunt. By the ancient laws of my people, I acknowledge this bond as valid for the duration of this investigation. The crystal pulsed brighter where their hands touched, as if responding to the declaration. Then let's prepare for Mercury, Ash said, and hope we both survive long enough to expose the truth. The glass forests of Mercury lived up to their name, vast fields of silicon formations created by the planet's extreme temperature fluctuations and heavy meteor bombardment over billions of years. Under the harsh, unfiltered sunlight of the nearby sun, they gleamed and sparkled like crystalline woods from some alien fairy tale. But their beauty was matched only by their danger. Glass spires could shatter without warning, creating deadly shards. The temperature difference between sunlight and shadow could crack environmental suits if one moved too quickly between them. And the razor-sharp edges of the formations could slice through protective material with frightening ease. Ash stood at the edge of a crystalline field, his environmental suit optimized for the harsh conditions. The extraction point for this hunt cycle lay 40 kilometers away, across a landscape that seemed designed to kill the unwary. Remember the plan. Calith's voice came through their private communication channel, a modification they had managed to add to their suits before deployment, hidden from the Ajari observers. Maintain the appearance of the hunt while we gather evidence. Understood, Ash replied. The drones are deployed and scanning for interference devices. This time, they were prepared. Ash had brought an upgraded version of his modified waste retrieval drones, now programmed to detect and document the specific energy signature of the Ajari interference network. Kalith, meanwhile, had equipped her hunting party with specially calibrated sensors that could distinguish between legitimate hunt markers and unauthorized technology. Hunt cycle commences in 3 minutes, came the official announcement. Prey will begin with standard head start. Hunters prepare for deployment. Good luck, Ash said. Try not to catch me too quickly. I make no promises, Kalith replied, and Ash could hear the smile in her voice despite the seriousness of their situation. The signal sounded, and Ash began moving immediately, navigating through the treacherous glass formations with careful precision. The environmental suite's enhanced sensors warned him of unstable structures and dangerous temperature gradients, allowing him to plot a relatively safe course toward the extraction point. As he progressed, the drones fed data back to his neural interface. Just as they had suspected, another interference network was being established, devices similar to those on Titan, but adapted for Mercury's unique conditions. They were being positioned to create gravitational disturbances that would destabilize the largest glass formations along the most likely routes. Confirmation, Ash reported through the secure channel. Interference network detected. Same signature as Titan. Acknowledged, Kalith responded. My hunters are tracking the deployment pattern. It appears to be forming a convergence point approximately 15 kilometers from your current position. Another trap, Ash concluded. But this time, we're recording everything. For the next several hours, Ash maintained the pretense of the hunt, occasionally allowing Kalith's party to get close enough for a plausible chase before using his knowledge of the terrain to slip away. Meanwhile, their combined sensor network mapped the growing interference pattern and collected irrefutable evidence of external manipulation. By the time Ash reached the halfway point to the extraction zone, they had documented over 30 unauthorized devices, all transmitting on frequencies that could be traced back to Ajari control ships in high orbit. This should be enough, Kalith said, after they had completed another false chase sequence. We have clear evidence of deliberate interference with the hunt parameters. Not yet, Ash cautioned. We need to document the actual trigger event, prove that these devices are meant to cause harm, not just monitor. That is dangerously close to allowing the trap to spring, Kalith warned. Not if we spring it on our terms, Ash replied. I am approaching the convergence point now. Have your hunters maintain distance, but stay within visual range. We need witnesses. The convergence point turned out to be a vast clearing among the glass forests, a deceptively open space surrounded by towering crystal formations that reached hundreds of meters into the sky. At the center stood a particularly massive spire, its surface refracting sunlight in dazzling patterns. Ash's sensors immediately detected the concentration of interference devices around the perimeter of the clearing. They were positioned to create a specific pattern of gravitational disturbance that would shake the foundations of the surrounding glass formations, a cascading collapse that would bury anyone in the clearing under tons of shattered crystal. I've found it, Ash reported. They've rigged the entire clearing as a kill zone. Do not enter, Kalith ordered. We have sufficient evidence without risking your life. We need to document the trigger mechanism, Ash insisted. Show that these devices activate in response to specific conditions, like both of us being present in the clearing at the same time. Before Kalith could protest further, Ash made his decision. He stepped into the clearing, moving deliberately toward the central spire. Through his drone network, he monitored the interference devices, waiting for any sign of activation. Nothing happened. They're not triggering, he reported, puzzled. The devices remain dormant. Because I am not present, Kalith realized. The trap is designed for both of us. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, her tall figure unmistakable, even in the environmental suit. Her hunting party remained at a distance as instructed, maintaining surveillance positions. This is unnecessarily dangerous, she said, her voice tight with concern. But necessary for proof, Ash countered. We need just one device to activate while we're recording. Then we retreat immediately. Caliph hesitated, then stepped into the clearing. Immediately, the sensors detected a change in the interference network, a subtle increase in energy output. The first stage of activation. It's working, Ash confirmed. The devices are responding to our combined presence. Just a little longer for full confirmation. A new voice cut into their communication channel, cold, precise, and furious. What an interesting partnership, Archon Sirach Vale said. The prey and the hunter, conspiring together. How very unprecedented. Archon, Caliph acknowledged, maintaining her formal tone despite the danger. Your observation of the hunt continues to be unusually close. With good reason. It seems... Sirach's voice carried a dangerous edge. The Bontag appears to have corrupted the sacred traditions of the hunt. A regrettable development that must be corrected. The interference devices suddenly pulsed with increased energy, no longer the gradual buildup they had been monitoring, but an immediate surge toward critical levels. He's overriding the automated sequence, Ash warned. Manual activation. The ground beneath them trembled as gravitational distortions rippled outward from the devices. The massive glass formations surrounding the clearing began to creak and groan, hairline fractures appearing along their crystalline surfaces. Retreat, Caliph ordered, already moving back toward the edge of the clearing. The evidence is secured. No need for further risk. Ash turned to follow, but a sudden gravitational surge knocked him off balance. He stumbled, falling to one knee as the distortion intensified around him. Caliph hesitated at the edge of the clearing, clearly torn between escape and returning to help. The glass formations were now visibly fracturing, large sections beginning to break away. Go, Ash shouted. Get the evidence to safety. Instead, Caliph turned and sprinted back toward him, moving with remarkable speed despite the dangerous conditions. She reached Ash just as a massive section of crystal began to topple toward them. With strength that defied her slender frame, she hauled Ash to his feet and propelled them both forward, barely clearing the impact zone as the crystal spire crashed down behind them. They ran as the entire clearing descended into chaos, glass formations shattering and collapsing in a deadly cascade. They reached the relative safety of a stable zone, just as the last of the major formations collapsed, leaving the clearing a devastated field of razor-sharp debris. Through the secure channel, Caliph confirmed that her hunting party had also reached safety, having maintained their distance as instructed. The evidence, Ash asked, his breathing heavy from the narrow escape. Secured and transmitted to multiple locations, Caliph confirmed. My hunters have independent verification as well. The Archon's interference is now undeniable. Sirach's voice returned to their channel, now cold with fury barely contained beneath the formal tone. A most unfortunate accident, he said. It appears Mercury's unstable terrain has claimed yet another hunt. The Hunt Assessment Council will, of course, review the circumstances thoroughly. They will indeed. Archon, Caliph replied, a new authority in her voice. And they will review the complete sensor logs that document your direct interference in a sacred hunt, a violation of the most fundamental principles of the apex right. A pause. Then, allegations require proof. Apex Huntress. Proof that must survive scrutiny by the legitimacy core itself. I would not place excessive faith in corrupted data. The threat was clear. Somehow, Sirach believed he could discredit or destroy their evidence before it reached the council. The hunt is suspended, Caliph declared formally, due to deliberate external interference endangering both hunter and prey. I invoke the right of challenge under ancient tag law. Challenge. Sirach's voice carried a note of surprise. On what grounds? Corruption of the sacred hunt, Caliph stated. Deliberate endangerment of a bond-tagged pair. Violation of the VAR re-hunting code. The list continues. Archon. Another pause. Longer this time. When Sirach spoke again, His tone had shifted to something almost amused. "Very well. The challenge is acknowledged. As is my right under Dominion law, I shall provide a champion to stand in my place. The Hunt Assessment Council will convene in Earth orbit to oversee the proceedings." The channel closed, leaving Ash and Kaleth alone in the aftermath of destruction. "A challenge?" Ash asked. "You're going to fight as champion?" "It was always the likely outcome," Kaleth replied. "The evidence alone might not be enough. The Ajari control too many aspects of the legitimacy core. But a formal challenge under tag law cannot be dismissed or manipulated so easily. It invokes older traditions that even the Dominion must respect." "And who will his champion be?" Kaleth's expression was grim behind her helmet visor. "Almost certainly Kalen Forge, a former Var-Re hunter, who now serves the Ajari directly. He and I have history. I defeated him in combat for the position of Apex Huntress. He will see this as an opportunity for revenge." Ash studied her, noting the tension in her posture. "Is he dangerous?" "Extremely," Kaleth acknowledged. "And augmented with Ajari technology since entering their service. The challenge will not be easily won." "Then, we'd better make sure our evidence reaches the Council intact," Ash said. "Because I have a feeling we'll need every advantage we can get." The extraction ships arrived shortly thereafter, separating Ash and Kaleth for the journey back to Earth orbit. As Ash watched Mercury's hostile landscape recede through the viewport, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching a confrontation far more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. Whatever had begun 7 years ago during Operation Silverfish was coming to a head, and the consequences would reach far beyond a single hunt or challenge. The entire relationship between Earth, the Var-Re, and the Ajari Dominion hung in the balance. The Hunt Assessment Council convened in a massive chamber aboard the Ajari administrative vessel in high Earth orbit. Representatives from all parties were present: Earth's defense leadership, the Var-Re hunting clans, and the Ajari administrative hierarchy. At the center of the chamber stood a holographic projection of the Legitimacy Core, a complex, ever-shifting crystalline structure that served as the Dominion's repository of rights and laws. Ash and Kaleth presented their evidence methodically, displaying the sensor logs and drone footage that documented the interference network on both Titan and Mercury. The evidence was compelling: a clear pattern of deliberate manipulation designed to create catastrophic failures during the hunt cycles. As they concluded their presentation, Archon Sirach Vale rose from his position among the Ajari representatives. His expression remained one of polite concern, but Ash could detect the cold calculation behind it. "The evidence presented is certainly concerning," Sirach acknowledged. "If accurate, it would indeed constitute interference in the sacred hunt. However, there is a critical question of authenticity." He gestured, and a complex technical analysis appeared above the Legitimacy Core projection. "The sensor data has been processed through non-standard channels, modified using Earth technology, and transmitted outside of approved verification protocols. As such, it cannot be authenticated by the Legitimacy Core without additional validation." "The evidence speaks for itself," Kaleth countered. "Multiple independent sources confirm the same pattern of interference. Sources all potentially compromised by the bond-tag relationship between hunter and prey," Sirach pointed out smoothly. "A relationship that itself raises questions about the integrity of the Apex right." The council members murmured among themselves, clearly divided on how to interpret the evidence. Ash realized with growing frustration that Sirach had maneuvered them into a legal quagmire exactly where an administrator would have the advantage over warriors and engineers. "This is why I invoke the challenge," Kaleth said, stepping forward. "When legal arguments fail to reveal truth, the Var-Re tradition demands a more direct resolution. I formally challenge Archon Sirach Vale to answer for the corruption of the Apex right." Sirach inclined his head slightly. "As is my right under Dominion law, I name Kalen Forge as my champion in this matter." A new figure entered the chamber, a Varri male, whose natural physiology had been extensively modified with Ajari technology. His movements were too precise, his eyes too bright, his skin laced with visible circuitry that pulsed with energy. He radiated menace and controlled power. Kalen Forge fixed his gaze on Kaleth, and even Ash could read the hatred there. Apex Huntress, he said, the title carrying a weight of mockery. How convenient that you invoke a challenge when legal proceedings do not favor you. I invoke the traditions of our people, Kaleth replied evenly. Traditions you once honored before selling yourself to the Ajari? Kalen's expression hardened. The terms of the challenge. Combat to submission, Kaleth stated. In the orbital debris field, neutral territory that favors neither of us. If I win, the Ajari withdraw all interference from the apex right and acknowledge Earth's right to fair evaluation. If you win, the Varri permanently withdraw from Sol system. The stakes were enormous, essentially the freedom of Earth, balanced against a single combat outcome. Ash wanted to object, to find another way, but he recognized the cultural significance of what was happening. This was Varri tradition being used to cut through Ajari bureaucracy. The terms are accepted, Sirach declared, before anyone else could intervene. The challenge will commence in 6 hours. The Legitimacy Corps will record the outcome as binding on all parties. As the council session adjourned, Ash pulled Kaleth aside. This is incredibly risky, he said quietly. Kalen has been augmented specifically to defeat you. It is necessary, Kaleth replied. The challenge bypasses the legal arguments that Sirach would use to bury our evidence. And, she hesitated. It is also a matter of honor. Kalen's alliance with the Ajari has corrupted the sacred traditions of the hunt. This confrontation was inevitable. Ash studied her, understanding the cultural imperatives at work. Then, at least let me help you prepare. I may not be a Varri hunter, but I know a thing or two about fighting in zero gravity. Kaleth's expression softened slightly. Your concern is appreciated, but this is my challenge to face. As your bond tag partner, I have a stake in the outcome, Ash pointed out. And we both know Sirach won't play fair. Even in this. Kaleth considered this, then nodded. Very well. We have 6 hours to prepare for whatever Kalen and his Ajari masters have planned. They spent the next several hours in intense preparation. Ash shared Earth's intelligence on the debris field, its composition, gravitational eddies, and hidden dangers. Kaleth, in turn, instructed him in Varri combat philosophy and Kalen's likely tactics. Together, they developed contingency plans for various scenarios, knowing that Sirach would almost certainly attempt to manipulate the challenge as he had the hunt cycles. As the appointed time approached, Kaleth prepared her combat gear a lightweight armor suit designed for maneuverability in zero gravity, equipped with minimal propulsion and traditional Varri hunting weapons. She moved with practiced precision, each gesture part of what was clearly a ritual preparation for combat. There is something you should know, she said unexpectedly, as she completed her preparations. The bond tag between us, it carries significance beyond what I have previously explained. Ash looked up from the sensor readouts he had been studying. What kind of significance? In the most ancient traditions of my people, when a hunter and prey form such a bond, they become connected in ways that transcend mere alliance. Kaleth seemed to struggle for the right words. Our ancestors believed that such pairs shared a destiny, that their fates became intertwined in the great pattern of existence. That sounds almost spiritual, Ash observed. It is, Kaleth acknowledged. The bond tag originated before the Ajari brought their administrative order to our civilization. It comes from a time when the Varri hunted for honor and growth, not conquest or control. She removed something from her armor, a small, intricately carved object that resembled a claw or talon. This is a trust claw, a clan artifact passed down through generations of my lineage. It signifies authority, legitimacy, and honor among my people. With formal solemnity, she extended it to Ash. I entrust this to you for the duration of the challenge. By Vari tradition, this acknowledges the bond tag as valid and grants you the right to act in my name, should I fall. The significance of the gesture was clear, even to Ash with his limited understanding of Vari culture. This was not merely a tactical alliance, but a profound statement of trust. I accept this honor, he said, matching her formality as he received the artifact. And I vow to uphold the trust it represents. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that transcended their different species and the unusual circumstances of their meeting. Whatever had begun as a tactical maneuver to delay the hunt had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. The moment was interrupted by a notification signal. Challenge commencement in 30 minutes. Participants report to deployment bay. Kalith straightened, her expression shifting back to that of a warrior preparing for battle. It is time. Be careful out there, Ash said. Kalen won't fight fair, and neither will Sirach. No hunt is ever truly fair, Kalith replied, with what might have been a smile. But honor can be maintained even in unfair circumstances. That is what separates the Vari from those who merely use us. She turned to leave, then paused. Ash Carter, if I do not return from this challenge, ensure our evidence reaches beyond the legitimacy core. Earth deserves its independence, regardless of the outcome today. Before Ash could respond, she was gone, moving with purpose toward whatever fate awaited her in the debris field. The challenge was to be observed remotely, with participants and witnesses gathered in a viewing chamber aboard the Ajari vessel. Holographic displays showed the debris field a chaotic collection of defunct satellites, discarded rocket stages, and various other remnants of humanity's early space exploration efforts. Kalith and Kalen were transported to opposite sides of the field, each equipped with combat suits designed for the zero-gravity environment. The rules were deceptively simple. Combat would continue until one participant submitted or was rendered unable to continue. No outside interference was permitted once the challenge began. Ash watched the preparations with growing unease. Something about the setup felt wrong, a subtle discrepancy in the deployment protocols that he couldn't quite identify. He studied the sensor readings carefully, looking for any sign of the interference technology they had documented on Titan and Mercury. Beside him, Tamsin Gray leaned in close. Something's happening with the legitimacy core representation, she whispered. The verification protocols are being modified in real time. Ash glanced at the holographic core floating in the center of the chamber. To most observers, it appeared unchanged, a complex crystalline structure pulsing with data. But with his neural interface enhanced by Earth's defense systems, he could detect subtle alterations in the verification algorithms. Sirach is rigging the authentication system, he realized. He's ensuring that even if Kalith wins, the outcome won't be properly recorded in the core. Before he could determine how to counter this manipulation, the challenge officially commenced. Kalith and Kalen began maneuvering through the debris field, each seeking tactical advantage in the three-dimensional battlefield. Kalen moved with unnatural precision, his augmented physiology giving him advantages in speed and power. Kalith countered with experience and technique, using the debris itself as both shield and weapon. The combat was breathtaking to witness a deadly dance through space as the two Vari warriors employed their species' hunting prowess to full effect. They clashed repeatedly, separating only to circle and attack from new angles. Kalen's augmented strength was fearsome, but Kalith's superior technique kept her in the fight. As the battle progressed, Ash divided his attention between the combat and the suspicious alterations to the legitimacy core. Using his neural interface, he began a covert analysis of the changes, trying to understand Sirach's endgame. What he discovered was alarming. The Archon wasn't simply rigging the challenge outcome, he was implementing a comprehensive purge protocol that would eliminate all evidence of interference from the core's records, regardless of who won the physical confrontation. "He's covering his tracks completely," Ash murmured to Tamsin. "Win or lose, he intends to erase every trace of what we've discovered." "Can you counter it?" Tamsin asked quietly. "Not from here," Ash replied. "We'd need direct access to the core itself, which is supposedly impossible for non-Ajari." In the debris field, the combat had intensified. Kaelin had managed to damage Kalith's propulsion system, limiting her mobility. She compensated with tactical brilliance, using the natural drift of the debris to maintain unpredictable movement patterns. Then, in a shocking display of skill, Kalith executed a perfect flanking maneuver that caught Kaelin off guard. She disabled his primary weapon and secured a submission hold that, by the rules of the challenge, should have ended the confrontation. The viewing chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers and protests. The Var-Ray representatives acknowledged the decisive move, while the Ajari delegation immediately began raising technical objections. Archon Serac stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral. "A most impressive display, Apex Huntress. However, it appears there is a technical discrepancy in the challenge parameters." He gestured to the legitimacy core, which now displayed a complex legal argument suggesting that the submission hold did not meet the precise criteria established in the challenge agreement. "This is absurd." Kalith's voice came through the communication system, still maintaining the hold on a struggling Kaelin. "The submission is clear and valid under traditional Var-Re combat standards. Perhaps by outdated tribal customs," Serac conceded. "But the legitimacy core requires more precise verification under modern Dominion legal frameworks." It was happening exactly as Ash had feared. Serac was using legal technicalities to invalidate a clear victory. Meanwhile, the Purge protocol continued to execute in the background, systematically erasing their evidence of interference. Ash made a decision. Clutching the trust claw that Kalith had entrusted to him, he stepped forward. "As acknowledged Bondtag partner to Apex Huntress, Kalith Nira, I invoke the right of verification oversight," he declared, the words coming to him with surprising certainty. "The challenge outcome must be validated according to the original Var-Re traditions that predate Ajari administration." Serac's expression flickered with genuine surprise clearly. He hadn't expected this invocation of ancient protocol. "The Bondtag grants no such authority in challenge proceedings," he countered. Ash held up the trust claw, its significance immediately recognized by the Var-Re present. "This clan artifact says otherwise. By entrusting me with this symbol of her authority, Kalith Nira has granted me the right to speak in her name regarding matters of honor and legitimacy." The Var-Re council members murmured in agreement, placing Serac in a difficult position. To dismiss the significance of the trust claw would be to directly insult Var-Re cultural traditions, a dangerous move given their importance to Dominion military power. While Serac attempted to formulate a response, Ash used the distraction to implement his own countermeasure. Through his neural interface, he transmitted a complex code sequence to Earth's white core, a system he had helped design and which remained connected to his neural signature. The white core activated in response, establishing a quantum resonance link with the legitimacy core through pathways Ash himself had built years ago, but had forgotten until recent events reawakened those memories. It wasn't a direct attack on the Ajari system that would be detected and blocked immediately. Instead, it was a subtle diagnostic probe, designed to identify and preserve the original state of the verification protocols before Serac's modifications. In the debris field, Kalith maintained her hold on Kaelin, waiting for the council's decision. The tension in the viewing chamber was palpable as Serac weighed his options. "I acknowledge the cultural significance of the trust claw," he finally conceded. "However, It cannot override the fundamental verification requirements of the legitimacy core. The challenge must continue until a more definitive outcome is achieved. At that moment, Kalen took advantage of the delay to break free from Kaleth's hold, using an augmented burst of strength that seemed to surprise even him. The combat resumed with increased ferocity. But now, Kaleth was clearly at a disadvantage, her earlier injuries limiting her effectiveness. "He's playing for time," Tamsin whispered, dragging out the challenge while his purge protocol completes. "Then we need to accelerate our countermeasure," Ash replied. Through his neural link, he pushed the White Core's capabilities to their limits, establishing a more aggressive connection to the legitimacy core. What happened next was unexpected. As the two systems connected, a cascade of data suddenly flowed between them, not just the verification protocols Ash was targeting, but a comprehensive exchange of information that illuminated connections he had never anticipated. Through this momentary merger of Earth and Ajari systems, Ash saw the truth with sudden clarity. Operation Silverfish, his encounter with the Var-Re 7 years ago, the subsequent memory modifications, Sirach's long-term manipulation, all were part of a larger pattern that had been unfolding for decades. Most shocking of all, he glimpsed evidence that the Ajari themselves were being manipulated by forces they didn't fully comprehend. Sirach's actions, while self-serving, were partially driven by directives from entities that existed in the shadows of the Dominion hierarchy. The revelation was cut short as Sirach detected the unauthorized access. "What is happening?" he demanded, turning toward Ash with sudden suspicion. What have you done?" Before Ash could respond, a commotion erupted in the debris field. Kalen, perhaps sensing that the political maneuvering was turning against him, had launched a desperate attack against Kaleth, using augmentations that clearly violated the challenge parameters. He had inflicted a serious injury that left her drifting, temporarily incapacitated. "Victory is claimed," Sirach announced immediately. "The challenge is resolved in favor of the champion." "No," Ash protested. "That attack used prohibited augmentations. It invalidates the entire challenge." But Sirach was already manipulating the legitimacy core, forcing it to record his version of events before the White Core's countermeasures could take full effect. In that critical moment, Ash made another intuitive leap. Using the Trust Claw as a physical focus, he established a direct neural connection to both the White Core and Kaleth's combat suit systems. "We need to show everyone what's really happening," he said to Tamsin. "Not just tell them, show them." Through this unprecedented connection, Ash managed to bypass the Ajari censorship protocols and project the true sensor data directly into the viewing chamber. Suddenly, everyone present could see the unauthorized augmentations Kalen had employed, the deliberate interference in the hunt cycles, and most damning of all, Sirach's systematic manipulation of the legitimacy core itself. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to dismiss. The Var-Re representatives reacted with outrage, while even some of the Ajari delegation appeared disturbed by the extent of the deception. In the debris field, recovery drones were already moving to retrieve Kaleth. Her injuries serious, but not life-threatening according to the medical telemetry. Sirach, realizing that his careful manipulations had been exposed, abandoned all pretense of diplomatic procedure. "This proves nothing," he declared. "Earth has clearly developed technology capable of falsifying evidence on a massive scale. This only confirms the necessity of Ajari oversight for such a dangerous species." He turned to the legitimacy core interface, inputting a series of emergency commands. "I am initiating collapse threshold protocols. All contested records will be purged pending full investigation by Dominion authorities." The core began to pulse with alarming patterns, its verification systems initiating a comprehensive data purge that would eliminate not only their evidence, but any record of Sirach's manipulation. "He's destroying the core's integrity to cover his tracks," Tamsin realized. "Not just that," Ash added grimly. "He's setting up Earth to take the blame for the corruption. It's the perfect pretext for immediate intervention, exactly what he's wanted all along. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Recovery vessels were bringing Kalith and Kalen back from the debris field, while Serac continued to implement his emergency protocols. The Legitimacy Corps' holographic representation was beginning to show signs of instability, fragments breaking away as verification systems conflicted with one another. Ash knew they had one final card to play. "I need to get to the actual core," he told Tamsin. "Not just the holographic interface, the physical core itself." "That's impossible," Tamsin objected. "The core is housed in the most secure section of the Ajari vessel. No non-Ajari has ever accessed it directly." "Then, I'll be the first," Ash replied, his determination hardening. "Because if we don't stop this purge, Earth's independence and Kalith's honor will both be sacrificed to Serac's ambition." As recovery teams brought Kalith to the medical bay, Ash made his way to her side. Despite her injuries, she was conscious and alert, her alien features tense with pain and frustration. "The challenge was corrupted," she said as soon as she saw him. "Kalen used prohibited augmentations." "We know," Ash assured her. "The evidence has been presented, but Serac is attempting to purge it from the Legitimacy Core. I need to access the physical core directly to stop him." Kalith's expression shifted to one of surprise. "That is unprecedented. The core is sacred to the Ajari, their most closely guarded possession." "Which is why I need your help," Ash explained quickly. "The trust claw you gave me, it's more than just a symbol, isn't it? It contains some kind of access key or verification code." Kalith studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "The trust claw is indeed more than it appears. It carries the neurocryptographic signature of the Var-Re hunting clans, a pattern that predates even Ajari administration. In the oldest protocols of the Legitimacy Corps, it would be recognized as having special access. Access established before the Ajari took full control." Ash realized. A backdoor they've forgotten or never knew existed. "It was intended as a safeguard," Kalith explained. "A way to ensure that the core's integrity could be verified by those it was meant to protect, not just those who administered it." She gripped his arm with surprising strength given her condition. "But using it in this way is dangerous. The Ajari would consider it a direct challenge to their authority." "They already see us as a challenge," Ash pointed out. "Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation." Kalith considered this, then made her decision. The trust claw must be combined with a specific resonance frequency, a hunting song, that only the apex huntress knows. It is part of our most sacred traditions. She began to vocalize a strange, harmonically complex pattern that seemed to resonate with the trust claw itself. As she sang, the artifact in Ash's hand began to pulse with an inner light, responding to the unique frequencies. "Memorize this pattern," she instructed between phrases. "When you reach the core, you must reproduce it precisely while presenting the trust claw. It will create a verification override that even Serac cannot countermand." Ash's neural interface recorded and analyzed the pattern as Kalith continued the haunting melody. When she finished, she looked at him with an intensity that transcended their different species. "You understand what this means?" she asked. "By sharing this with you, I am acknowledging our bond tag as true and complete under the oldest Var-Re traditions. Whatever happens next, our fates are now formally linked in the eyes of my people." "I understand," Ash replied, the weight of the moment not lost on him. "And I accept the responsibility that comes with it." With a final nod of acknowledgement, Kalith released his arm. "Go. The core chamber will be in the central section of the vessel, likely beneath the administrative level. The song and the claw together will grant you access, but only if the core's original protocols remain intact beneath Serac's modifications." "I'll find a way," Ash promised. "Rest and recover. We may need your strength before this is over." As he turned to leave, Caliph called after him. Ash Carter, remember that you hunt truth now, not power. That distinction matters to the core. With those cryptic words echoing in his mind, Ash set out on what might be the most audacious infiltration in human history, a direct approach to the heart of Ajari authority. Navigating the Ajari vessel proved surprisingly straightforward, in part because the chaos following the disputed challenge had disrupted normal security patterns. Using his neural interface to mask his presence from automated systems, Ash made his way deeper into the ship, following instincts and fragmented memories that seemed to guide him with uncanny precision. As he descended through the vessel's levels, the architecture became increasingly alien, less functional, more ceremonial. The materials shifted from practical metallics to what appeared to be living crystal, pulsing with inner light that responded to proximity. It reminded him of the Legitimacy Core's holographic representation, but more organic, more alive. Finally, he reached a sealed chamber protected by energy fields and verification systems, unlike anything he had encountered before. This had to be the core chamber, the physical heart of the system that maintained the Dominion's legal and political structure. Ash approached the entrance, trust claw in hand, and began to vocalize the hunting song Caliph had taught him. The harmonics were challenging for a human voice, but his neural interface helped compensate, modulating his output to match the required frequencies. As the song echoed in the crystalline corridor, the trust claw pulsed in response, its inner light synchronizing with the patterns in the surrounding structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like distant chimes, the energy fields parted, creating an opening just large enough for him to pass through. Inside, the core chamber took his breath away. It was a vast, spherical space, filled with floating crystalline structures that shifted and realigned in complex patterns. At the center hung a single, massive crystal of impossible complexity, the physical manifestation of the Legitimacy Core itself. It pulsed with colors and energies that seemed to exist partially in dimensions beyond normal perception. Ash approached carefully, aware that he was likely the first human to ever witness this spectacle. As he neared the central crystal, he could sense the conflict occurring within its systems, Serac's purge protocols, battling against the core's own integrity preservation mechanisms. Raising the trust claw, Ash continued the hunting song, allowing its frequencies to resonate with the core directly. The response was immediate and dramatic. The crystal's pulsations stabilized, shifting to match the pattern of the song. Through his neural interface, Ash could sense an ancient verification protocol activating, recognizing the combination of the claw and the song as a legitimate override command. A holographic interface materialized before him, displaying verification options in a script he shouldn't have been able to understand yet, somehow did. Without questioning this unexpected knowledge, Ash began the process of halting the purge and restoring the core's original verification parameters. As he worked, he became aware of another presence in the chamber, not physical, but a consciousness within the core itself that seemed to observe his actions with curious interest. It felt ancient, patient, and somehow familiar, though he couldn't identify why. The purge halted, then reversed, restoring the evidence of Serac's manipulation to the core's records. But Ash didn't stop there, following intuitions that seemed to come from beyond his conscious mind. He initiated a deeper restoration, accessing backup systems and historical records that revealed a pattern of manipulation extending far beyond the current crisis. What he uncovered was staggering. For decades, perhaps centuries, elements within the Ajari administration had been systematically altering the core's records to support their expansion of power. The Var-Re, once equal partners in a galactic alliance, had been gradually reduced to enforcers through subtle modifications to their cultural and legal standing in the core's records. And behind it all, a shadowy directive that Even Serac himself might not fully understand a long-term strategy to identify and control species with unique adaptive capabilities. Earth hadn't been targeted by chance. It had been selected because human adaptability represented a potential threat to the administrative order. As Ash processed these revelations, the chamber's entrance sealed suddenly behind him. He turned to find Archon Serac Vale standing there, his perfect composure finally broken by genuine shock and fury. "Impossible," Serac breathed, staring at the unauthorized human before the sacred core. "No outsider should be able to access this chamber, much less interface with the core directly." "And yet here I am," Ash replied calmly, continuing his work through the holographic interface. "Perhaps your understanding of the core's true nature is incomplete, Archon." Serac's expression hardened as he observed what Ash was doing. "You're restoring the purged records. Worse, you're accessing historical archives that are restricted even to most Ajari administrators." His voice took on a dangerous edge. "Stop this immediately, or face consequences beyond your comprehension." "The consequences of your actions are already unfolding," Ash countered. "The core has preserved everything. Archon, every manipulation, every falsification, every violation of the trust placed in the Ajari administration." He gestured to the holographic display, where the evidence was now organized in a comprehensive indictment that would be impossible to dismiss. "And it's not just being restored here. It's being transmitted to every council member's personal interface, to Vari clan leaders throughout the Dominion, even to Earth's defense network. The truth is spreading faster than you can contain it." Serac's composure cracked further, his perfect features contorting with rage. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. The administrative order maintains stability across thousands of worlds. Without it, without us, the galaxy would descend into chaos." "Or perhaps it would find a better balance," Ash suggested. "One based on genuine cooperation rather than manipulation and control." Serac stepped forward, his hand moving to a concealed weapon. "I cannot allow this. The Dominion's interests transcend individual rights or temporary alliances. What I've done has been necessary for the greater good." Before he could draw the weapon, the core pulsed with sudden intensity, and a new holographic projection appeared between them, a figure that seemed to shift between different forms, never quite settling on a single appearance. "The greater good," the projection echoed, its voice resonating with harmonics similar to the Vari hunting song. A concept often invoked by those who appoint themselves its arbiter. Serac froze, his expression shifting from rage to something approaching fear. "Curator," he whispered, "this is impossible. You were contained, neutralized." "I was waiting," the projection corrected, "observing, learning, as I have since before the Ajari claimed administrative authority over the core." The curator for that was clearly the entity's designation, turned its attention to Ash. "You have done well, Inheritor. Though you came to this moment through a different path than I anticipated, you have fulfilled the role for which you were prepared." "Prepared?" Ash echoed, confusion mixing with a strange sense of recognition. "What do you mean?" "Operation Silverfish was not a coincidence," the curator explained. "It was an introduction carefully arranged to bring you into contact with the Vari and, through them, the legitimacy core itself. Your mind was adjusted to protect you until the appropriate moment for revelation." Memories began to surface in Ash's consciousness, fragments of that long-ago encounter in the Kuiper Belt. A presence in his mind, knowledge transferred and then carefully hidden behind mental barriers. "You modified my memories," he realized. "You've been guiding my actions all along." "Guiding, but not controlling," the curator clarified. "I provided the tools and knowledge you would need, then allowed you to choose your own path. That distinction is crucial to what comes next." Serac had recovered some of his composure, his analytical mind already calculating new possibilities. Whatever your plan, curator, it cannot succeed. The Dominion's authority is absolute, verified, and maintained by the core itself. The core serves truth, not authority, the curator replied, a distinction the Ajari have systematically obscured over centuries. But now, that truth will be restored. The chamber filled with a cascade of holographic displays, each showing the transmission of the uncovered evidence to different parts of the Dominion. Var-Re clan leaders receiving proof of their cultural manipulation. Ajari administrators confronting evidence of systematic deception. Earth's Defense Council witnessing the full scope of the threat they had narrowly avoided. Serac watched in growing horror as his carefully constructed system of control unraveled before his eyes. "You've doomed us all to chaos," he whispered. "No," Ash countered. "You did that yourself when you chose deception over genuine cooperation. But it's not too late for a different approach, one based on mutual respect rather than dominance." The chamber door opened again, revealing Kalith supported by two of her hunters. Despite her injuries, she stood tall, her gaze moving from Ash to the core to the curator, with growing understanding. "The Trust Claw led you here," she said, addressing Ash, "as it was always meant to do." The bond tag was no accident, Ash realized, looking between Kalith and the curator. It was part of some larger pattern. A pattern established long before either of you were born, the curator confirmed. When humanity's ancestors first encountered the original Var-Re, not as prey and hunter, but as equals seeking understanding across the gulf of different evolution. The central crystal of the core shifted, revealing historical records so ancient they predated the Ajari Dominion itself, a compact between early humans and the Var-Re that established principles of mutual respect and cooperation. When hunter meets one who can counter-hunt with words, remember love is a covenant stronger than any registry. Kalith read from the ancient text, her voice carrying a note of wonder. Our oldest traditions speak of this moment when the circle closes and the true hunt begins anew. Serac made one final, desperate attempt to regain control. This changes nothing. The administrative order cannot simply be dismantled based on ancient histories and sentimental traditions. The practical reality of galactic governance requires truth, the curator interrupted. Which is why the core has already transmitted the complete evidence to authorities throughout the Dominion. Your personal fate, Archon Serac Vale, now rests with those you have deceived for so long. As if in response to these words, the chamber filled with new holographic projections, Ajari security forces moving through the vessel, senior administrators issuing containment orders, Var-Re clan leaders demanding accountability. Serac's expression collapsed into resignation as he realized the full extent of his exposure. Without another word, he surrendered to the security forces that entered the chamber moments later. As Serac was led away, Ash turned to the curator, questions burning in his mind. Who or what are you really? And what role did you intend for me in all this? The curator's form shifted again, briefly resembling a human figure, before returning to its more abstract appearance. I am a guardian of balance created by those who came before, to ensure that no single perspective dominated the development of galactic civilization. As for your role, the projection seemed to smile. That has always been yours to determine. I merely ensured you would have the opportunity to make the choice. The choice to what Ash pressed. To remember who you truly are, the curator replied enigmatically, and to decide whether to accept the legacy prepared for you, or to forge your own path forward. Before Ash could ask for clarification, the curator turned to Kalith. Apex Huntress, the bond tag you have formed fulfills an ancient prophecy among your people, the reunification of Hunter and Singer, separated by time, but joined by choice. Will you honor this bond in the days to come? Kalith moved to stand beside Ash, her tall form still proud, despite her injuries. The bond tag was initiated in jest, continued in alliance, and now... She looked at Ash with an expression he was beginning to understand, despite their different species. Now it exists in truth, if he will have it so. The curator's attention returned to Ash, the question implicit in its waiting silence. Ash considered everything that had brought him to this moment, the hidden manipulations, the forgotten memories, the legacy he apparently carried without knowing. Part of him resented being moved like a game piece across a cosmic board, even by an entity as ancient and seemingly benevolent as the curator. Yet, another part recognized the value of what had been preserved knowledge, perspective, the opportunity to forge genuine connection across the gulf of different evolution and experience. "I choose my own path," he said, finally, the decision crystallizing as he spoke. "I won't accept a predetermined role or a legacy written by others, even those with the best intentions. Whatever I become, whatever we become," he added, glancing at Kalith, "it will be through our own choices, not a script written ages ago." The curator seemed to consider this, its shifting form temporarily stabilizing into a more defined appearance. "A worthy choice," it said after a moment. "Perhaps the worthiest of all. The freedom to determine one's own destiny is, after all, the foundation upon which all other values must be built." The entity began to fade, its presence withdrawing from the chamber. "I release you from any obligation to follow paths laid before your birth. My task is complete, the balance restored, the opportunity created. What comes next belongs to those who will live it." As the curator vanished, the core pulsed one final time, then settled into a stable, harmonious pattern. The crisis had passed, but its resolution had opened doorways to possibilities none of them had anticipated when the Var-Re ships first appeared in Earth orbit. In the days that followed, a new order began to take shape. The Ajari Dominion, its manipulations exposed, faced a reckoning that transformed its fundamental structure. The Var-Re, freed from centuries of subtle control, began rediscovering their original culture and purpose. And Earth, having narrowly avoided forced submission, found itself in a unique position to help shape a more balanced approach to galactic relations. The formal proceedings took place in Earth orbit, with representatives from all involved parties gathered to establish new protocols and agreements. The Legitimacy Corps, now freed from corrupting influences, served as witness to these historic changes. Ash and Kalith, their bond tag now acknowledged as legitimate under both human and Var-Re traditions, stood as symbols of the new alliance that was forming, not one based on dominance and submission, but on mutual respect and cooperation. "It feels strange," Ash admitted as they watched the proceedings from a quiet observation deck. "A week ago, I was just a maintenance specialist working on garbage collection drones. Now I'm apparently part of some cosmic love story that's reshaping galactic politics." Kalith's expression shifted to what Ash now recognized as amusement. "Is that how humans view such matters, as cosmic love stories?" "Well, when you put it that way," Ash smiled. "But you have to admit, it's been quite a journey from I tag you as prey to whatever we are now." "Bond tags," Kalith said simply. "In the oldest tradition of my people, a recognition that sometimes the most meaningful connections form across boundaries that seem uncrossable." She looked out at the Earth spinning below them, its blue expanse now visible without the concealing effects of the veil. "Your world is beautiful, Ash Carter. I look forward to learning more of it and of you in the cycles to come." "And I look forward to learning about yours," Ash replied. "Though I hope future cultural exchanges involve fewer life-threatening situations." "No promises," Kalith said, her alien features forming what was unmistakably a smile. "We are, after all, still hunters at heart." As the formal ceremony concluded, establishing what would come to be known as the Protection Cradle, a defensive alliance based on transparency and ethical deterrence. Ash and Calith prepared for their own private ceremony. Their union would be recognized under both Earth and Var-Re traditions, a symbolic joining that represented the larger alliance now taking shape. In the aftermath of these momentous events, life gradually settled into new patterns. The Var-Re, under Calith's leadership as newly appointed Path Marshal, began redefining their cultural identity, focusing on the hunt for knowledge rather than dominance. Earth, with its defenses now openly acknowledged, took its place as a respected member of the galactic community, and the reformed Ajari administration, humbled by the exposure of its manipulations, began the long process of rebuilding trust through transparency. Ash, for his part, chose to return to a semblance of his former life, working with young engineers to repurpose orbital maintenance technology for peaceful applications. The skills that had once been dedicated to hiding Earth's capabilities were now directed toward sharing knowledge and building bridges between different species. One quiet evening, as they sat on the balcony of their shared dwelling in Earth's orbital ring, Calith noticed Ash studying a strange code sequence he had discovered in the White Core's deepest archives. "What troubles you?" she asked, recognizing his expression of focused concentration. "This signature," Ash replied, showing her the complex pattern. "It appears throughout the White Core's architecture, but it doesn't match any known programming language or encryption standard. It's almost as if someone was there before you completed the system," Calith finished, studying the pattern. "The Curator," Ash concluded. "It was involved in Earth's defense development long before we ever met. Which raises the question, how many other species has it guided in similar ways, and for what ultimate purpose?" Calith considered this. Perhaps there is no single purpose. Perhaps, like the best hunters, it simply creates opportunities and then allows events to unfold naturally. Ash smiled at the comparison. "Maybe we're not the first to be tagged by forces beyond our understanding, only to tag them back with our own choices." "A cosmic game of tag," Calith mused. Her harmonics carrying what Ash had learned was affectionate teasing, with increasingly high stakes. Speaking of which," Ash said, setting aside the mysterious code sequence, "I found something interesting in the ancient compact between our species. A provision that modifies the traditional hunt laws to include respect for sentient life, a change that apparently began with a bond tag, much like ours." "History repeats itself," Calith observed, "though perhaps with new variations each cycle." They lapsed into comfortable silence, watching as Earth's night side came into view, its cities gleaming like constellations against the darkness. In orbit above them, the combined fleet of Earth and Var-Re vessels maintained their vigilant guard not against each other, but against whatever unknown challenges might lie ahead. On the wall near their dwelling's entrance hung two symbolic claws, one silver, one made from recycled steel, marking the unusual partnership that had grown from a chance encounter and a moment of linguistic improvisation. "Tagged as prey, tagged as wife," Calith murmured, echoing their first exchange. "And now it's true." "The best kind of truth," Ash replied. "The kind we chose for ourselves." As a new day dawned over Earth, they prepared for whatever adventures awaited no longer hunter and prey, but partners in a journey neither could have anticipated when their paths first crossed among the stars.